Warning, I'm about to make statements that will make many woodworkers very angry with me. But we're gonna have fun! Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome to my shop. I did a video recently on tools that would be great for the first-time woodworker. Particularly, I did a video on hand tools that would be great for the hybrid woodworker, and then I also did a video on you're just starting out with hand tools, what should you buy first? I'll leave a link to both of those down below. But on top of that, I had a whole bunch of people that asked me, well, what should be your first project? And that really got me thinking, what was my first project? What would I actually suggest most people would build? And I took a lot of criticism in the video for saying this, but in all honesty, the first project I would say to build still would be your bench. And so I want to kind of take a look at that, and then look at some of the other projects that you can do, and hopefully this will get your mind working on some of the things that you might want to work on. So let's dive in and take a look at it. Now, to take you down this journey of what tools should you build first, I want to kind of take you down my journey. And really, this whole YouTube channel is my journey in hand tools. The very first video on this YouTube channel was me buying my first hand plane. And I'm actually taking it apart and restoring it. I have no idea how to use it. I have no idea what the parts are, but I'm figuring it out. And from that point on, I was collecting tools here and there where I could find them cheap, restoring them, and cataloging the tools I restored, the tools I purchased, and the tools that I built. And so I kind of want to take you down that journey in this video and show you my thought process for what you should build first. Now, in all honesty, I say the first project you should build is a workbench. This is my first project. This is my workbench. Now, I built several things in order to make this. I built winding sticks. I built a mallet. I built clamps to clamp this together. And those were all smaller projects that I can make along the way to make my main goal project. And this whole thing was made out of 24 stud grade 2x4s. I found them on Craigslist. I think I paid like $10 for the pile of them. They were warped, they were twisted, but I was able to wiggle them back together and make a bench out of it. I bought my vise on Craigslist. I bought this one on Amazon when I saved up the money for it. This one was crazy expensive to me. It was 25 bucks. And to that point, I hadn't spent like $100 total on all my tools. It's a really simple design with a laminated top out of 2x4s, and then 2x4s sistered together to make the legs, and then sliding dovetailed into the top. A basic roubeau made out of 2x4s. Is this bench perfect? Absolutely not. It was a ton of work, and it was kind of out of my comfort zone, but that's okay. I learned the steps one at a time. I restored the hand plane, and then I figured out how to use the hand plane. I just messed around with it. Did I do a great job on it? No, it wasn't perfect. Oh well. I still made a bench, and this is a functional bench that I'm going to use for years and years to come. The only reason I'm not using this bench today is because when I changed around my shop, it was too long for it, and rather than cutting it to length, I decided to make a new bench. And so now I have a bench that I can do restoration and work like that on, and I have my really nice bench for all of my woodworking. And when you're making this bench, you then get to learn all of the other steps. Number one, how to use a hand plane. How do you plane down a board? How do you joint boards together to laminate a top? Then you have a top. Okay, well, then you can just continue on your process. You learned how to laminate boards together. You can laminate the legs together. Great, now we need to learn joinery. We need to do a dovetail, a sliding dovetail. Oh no, my first joinery was a sliding dovetail. Well, it's a huge, massive sliding dovetail, and a huge, massive sliding dovetail is a lot easier than a small, intricate one. And if you take your time and you think about it step by step, you can get through it. It's really not that hard of a project. Then I have mortise and tenons on the legs. Mortise and tenon, it's a fairly simple project. If you've done a sliding dovetail, you can do a mortise and tenon. Then I got my brace and bit, and I was able to drill out holes to put in the clamp. And that was my first foray into putting some mechanical item into it. With a mechanical item, you need a little bit more accuracy. You need it to be able to slide correctly. And so that teaches you to do things a little bit slower, a little bit more accurate. And you're just taking this whole thing step by step, and you then have a bench. And the bench really is the heart of the shop. And once you have a bench, the world is your oyster. So now that you have a bench, it's functional, and you have a working shop, and you're starting to get some tools because you made a couple tools to finish the bench, then you can start thinking about what is your next goal project? What is that big project you want to make? And don't think about what would become a good beginner project. Any project out there is a good beginner project. Just think about what project do you want to make, and then one by one break it down just like you did on this bench. With all the skills you learned on this bench with breaking something down, you can break it down into its steps, and you can think about what tools do you need to make that bench. You can either go buy those tools or you can make those tools. So let's take a look at some of the tools you can make, and then that might give you some ideas and spur you along in this discovery of woodworking. Now, I had a lot of people say that I was missing something on my tools list, and that thing missing was a mallet. I mentioned chisels, I mentioned a plane, I mentioned saws, but I didn't mention a mallet. And the reason being is any 2x4 you pick up can be your mallet. That's not something you really have to go out and buy. That's not something you have to think about. And in all honesty, a mallet really is a great first project. This was one of the first things that I built. And you can make a mallet out of firewood or just about any wood you find around. And I've had a lot of people asking, where do you find really thick wood like this? Well, in the firewood pile. It's a great place to get cheap, free wood. And you can mill it down into surfaces. And you'd like to see the video, I have several different videos on making mallets. You can see those as well. So you have your bench, you have your mallet, you have your starter set of chisels and saw and plane. Now we can start actually working on some of the other tools needed to do work. The next project I would normally tell people to do is make winding sticks. With the winding sticks, this allows you to do a larger flat work and actually do a lot more milling. It's a great project if you want to kind of stretch yourself out in putting in inlays and other things to make them look good. Do you need to do that? No, but it's a good practice and it's a way of learning things. You can actually get into making the clamps to make your bench. I have a video on making this clamp. When I made my first bench, I made a set of 7 of these. I think they ended up costing me like $5 a piece. The wood was from scrap that I got. I think I tore apart an old dresser for that. And then it was a long screw and a U-bolt, and voila, I have a clamp. It really doesn't take that much to come up with something. Making squares. I have a video on this one. This is an extremely useful thing for cutting down stock and working through it. And then you can start to get adventurous and making things like a marking gauge and planes. This is a chisel plane. I made several other regular body smoother planes, smoke shaves, and even shoes. At this point, you're starting to get to the point where you can do just about anything. You've done simple mortise and tenon joinery. You've done inlays and fitting and banding and trimming. You've done some mechanical fitting. How do you actually get something to fit nicely and tightly so it rides well? You can make a nice straight edge as you've made with a plane. You've even gotten into doing a little bit of carving and a functional work. And from that point on, the world is your oyster, and you can make just about anything you want to make. And that's why I kind of tell people, make your bench first, because a bench, though it is kind of intimidating, you can make a bench with a hand plane, a chisel, and a saw. It really doesn't take much more to do it than that. And once you have a bench in place, then you can start making a few other tools. And once you have a few other tools, then you can make more projects. You have tools to make the projects. Things like a router plane, very easy to use and very functional. It'll allow you to do a lot of other things. And so rather than picking a project to do, I tell people, pick what you need to make next to make the project you want to make. And start looking at things as opposed to, just like when you're looking at what tool should you buy next, look at what project you want to do and see what tools is that going to need. And so in that case, look at what project you might want to build in the future. What tools do you need to build that project? Start building those tools. And once you've started building a few tools, you'll get the skills to do all that. And making these tools will give you all the skills you need to make furniture. And the few other little things that you haven't gotten in that, well, then you can learn it when you make that furniture. It's really not that hard of a process to do. So think about what you need to make what you want to make, and then make it. And start with something small, and start working up to something a little bit more intricate and detailed, and then you might be surprised. And number one, you have the tools you need to make the project, and number two, you have the experience because you've gone through all of these steps. So I hope this is making sense for you. This is kind of taking you through the thought process of how I started building my shop and where I learned a lot of my skills in the woodworking trade. It is not that difficult, and if you break a project down into all of the small steps and into the tools you're going to need, and you tackle each one of those steps one at a time, any project, whether you're making an Elizabethan highboy or you're making a simple mallet. Just break it down into the individual steps and accomplish those one at a time. And you'll be surprised at what you can learn and how fast you can learn it. Because not only are you doing practice projects, you're actually turning those practice projects into something functional that you can use for the rest of your life. And you can find that something you made when you were first learning how to work can be one of your all-time favorite tools, because it is something that has all of those memories. It's something that has carried you through your entire time of woodworking, and you get to use it to make all those projects in the future. So I hope you liked this video. It was a kind of an interesting one for me. A lot of crazy ideas going on, and this is kind of my own thought process. I do want to say thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys are the reason why I can put out these videos. If you'd like to find out more about that, or if you'd like to help out, you can find out more down here. Also, we have a podcast every week, Wednesday mornings, Johnny, Zach, and I, where we talk all things crafted. I'll leave a link to that down below. If you'd like to see some behind-the-scenes footage, or possibly subscribe, you can do that as well. Until next time, have a wonderful day.